Okay, so crappiest thing first. About 2 weeks ago, we had to have one of our dogs put to sleep, and it was really, really unexpected. It wasn't something that we knew was wrong with him. He didn't ever come across ill or anything like that. He'd never had any problems before, so it really was out of the blue. Now, I don't want to talk literally about the entire story to the point where I'm literally going to start crying. I have already tried to make a video, saying goodbye video, where I sort of explain everything that happened, but I just bawled it. I just cried and cried and cried, and I just thought to myself, do you know what, I can't put that online. People will think I'm like, you know, really pathetic and whatever, so I'm just going to kind of explain it briefly. So Alfie was just 8 years old. Well, he was 8 and a bit years old. He was a West Highlander Terrier. I will insert some pictures after I've spoken so you can see him. And he was a really happy, healthy dog. Most Westies get a skin condition. 2 in 3 Westies usually get it. With Alfie, we never got it, so I guess that we were just the lucky ones. So Westies are really prone to sort of skin conditions and like dermatitis, things like that. And whatever, they get really irritated skin and stuff. But like I said, we never had any health problems with him. We also have another 2 dogs. We have Ozzy and Archie. Archie being the one that's down here. He's the youngest. I think he's about 4 and Ozzy is 15. So we were sort of more prepared, not that we were prepared ever for an animal to pass away, but we were sort of more ready for Ozzy to go because he's a lot older, he's got more problems and things like that. So we were kind of more prepared for maybe him to pass away. We did not think at any point it would be Alfie. So it really was a big shock for us. It was like, what the fuck is going on? So anyway, yabbling. Long story short, it was about 2 weeks before this had happened, we'd noticed that Alfie was not very happy in himself. He seemed a bit off, and just not quite himself. He like always gobbled his food and stuff, but he didn't really seem himself. And he was hobbling around a bit, so we thought that he'd just, you know, hurt his leg when we're taking him out walking. You know, I work with animals, I have for so long now, it's unreal. So, you know, I can kind of assess a situation to a level that I can do. And so we took him to the vets, and the vet had given us some pain relief to give him, saying that he'd probably just pulled a muscle. Him knowing that, you know, Alfie's never had any problems or anything on his records or whatever. So we were given some pain relief to give to him, and the muscle should, you know, just start healing itself. It was about 3 days in, and we noticed like this pain relief just wasn't helping him, and it just wasn't doing anything. You know, he was crying at night. Every time we tried to touch him to pick him up or anything like that, he just whimpered. He was just really not right. And although he was eating and stuff, you know, if Alfie stopped eating, there is something seriously wrong. Little did we know, you know, there was in the end. But so we took him back to the vets a couple of days later, and we said, look, vet man, the pain relief isn't working. What else can we, like, you know, what can you do for us? Let us know what you can do. And he said, he saw him walking around and stuff, and he was like, okay, well, we'll book him in for an x-ray, because he could have dislocated his hip, like, if he was like, you know, if we've been walking him and stuff. Which we always let the 3 dogs just run, because we live near fields and stuff, as you'll know if you've seen some of my vlogs. And so he could have dislocated his hip, so we'll give him an x-ray. So the x-ray was 2 days time, and we were still giving Alfie pain relief and stuff like that. And again, it wasn't working, and within the 2 days, like, Alfie had really dropped. Like, he weren't right at all. Like, again, he was still eating, but he just wasn't himself. He was really panting. Dogs can't sweat, so the fact that he was very hot was a big sign to me, like maybe he had an infection or something like that. You know, I did his temperature. He had a very high temperature. So we thought maybe he had an infection. So we just kept on top of that. We tried to keep him as cool as possible. As, you know, everything we could do, we tried to do. I'm not a vet, I just work with animals. I'm not like, you know, I'm not like a qualified vet or anything, but there's a certain amount that I know how to do and can do to my ability. So we just sort of did everything we could to make things easier. Like, he wanted picking up to go on the bed, or he wanted, you know, if you needed to go on the grass, he might have needed help getting into the garden. Squatting to go for a poo, he was struggling, he was starting to struggle, and this had dropped within about 2 days of seeing the vet. Like I say, like, we're waiting for his x-ray. So Wednesday morning crawled along, felt really slow. I wasn't currently at home this week, well, that week that everything was going on. That's a whole nother story. So it was a really hard week for me anyway. So I came back on the Wednesday morning to take Alfie to the vets because my mum can't drive. So I turned up about 7:30 to pick him up. He didn't look right at all. He looked very pained and he was very hot. He was panting. Where his tail was, like the back bit of his hair, like that area had felt quite swollen and very hot and inflamed. So I took him to the vets at about 8 o'clock in the morning, which is really early for them. And they said that he'd probably have his x-ray done at about 10:30. It's okay. At about 10:30. And because I know these vets, I said to him, I was like, please, can you just keep an eye on him? He's really hot. He's been panting. He's been apparently crying all night. He's still eating his food, but he's, you know, he's not himself, and I think that he could have an infection. You know, his back bit's really swollen. I just tried to tell them like everything that I knew, personally, like that, you know, that I'd noticed. And I was filling in the form to say like, you know, it's fine for him to have an x-ray and whatever, and contact details. So I had the home number, my dad's number, and my number. Well, they didn't have my number, but I gave them my number. I said because private calls don't usually come through on our house phone, and my dad is always working, so he might not pick up his mobile, so please call me if you can't get hold of them. So they had my number down as well. I mentioned that maybe he might need a blood test to see if he's got an infection. You know, they like to be told sometimes, you know, if you've noticed things, and they know me. I used to work at the vet, so they kind of know. And they're like, yeah, cool, like, we'll let the vets know. So it was about 10:30 when he had his x-ray done, and we hadn't heard anything. And sometimes they, you know, they're a bit late doing it, or they call a bit later or whatever. And again, like I say, I wasn't at home this week, so once I dropped him off at the vet, so I went straight back to Jim's. And like I say, a couple of hours had passed and we hadn't heard anything. So I tried to call my dad, and I was like, Dad, have you heard anything? Whatever. I couldn't get hold of my dad, which was a big worry to me, because if I can't get hold of my dad, nor can the vets. So I was like, crap. And I wanted to ring up the vets, but for some reason I didn't. I don't know what it was. I just didn't ring them up. And when my dad had realised he had a missed call, we rang the vets back, and they were like, John, my dad's name's John. John, it's not good news. We didn't want to call Amber because we didn't think that she'd want to hear it. I was like, great. Like, I gave them my number for a reason, and they didn't call me. Like, my dog was in that vet's for 2 hours, maybe like 2 hours longer than he could have been, just because they didn't think I could handle it, like the news. I have to hear bad news all the time when it comes to animals. You almost get this hard layer of shell that you just have to cope. Of course, with your own animals, it's more different, and you know, you struggle more, and it's more horrible and stuff, but I could have handled it. Like, if it meant that my dog would have been comfortable sooner, then freaking call me. That's why I put my number there. Like, don't not call me. So they said it's not good news. He's got a seriously aggressive case of cancer, and it's in his hips. And I just, like, when I found out, I held it together, and I have no idea how, because that is just like the worst case scenario. We were told he had a dislocated hip. We were told that he was fine, like as fine as he could be. You know, we were just none the wiser. I sort of dropped him off at the vets that day. Didn't have a clue that, you know, they would have come out and said, by the way, it's really aggressive cancer. You need to put your dog down, basically. So yeah, we were told that it was a seriously aggressive form of hip cancer, and it had gone into his bones, and it was spreading at a rapid rate. Like, within the time that he was there, it was probably getting worse and worse and worse. So luckily I was at the stables, and when I got hold of my dad and he told me, I just heard my mum screaming at the other end of the phone. Like, my dad was talking to me, and I could hear my mum in the background just bellowing, crying and screaming, and they felt guilty because they couldn't, obviously my dad was working, so he couldn't get hold of the phone to find out sooner. You know, this is rocking on about, you know, 2:45, and they didn't call me. Like, I put my number there so the vets could call me, and they didn't. So I was just so angry. Like, I wanted to lose my shit at the vets. Like, the fact that I know them as well, and they know me, and I've worked with them. Like, I get it, they were trying to protect me, but for God's sake, I put my number there for a reason. Like, call me, and they didn't. So anyway, so we had to go to the vets, and it was really, really sad. Like, we thought that Alfie still might have been a bit, like, you know, dozy from when he had the x-ray, because they have to give him, like, they have to make him a bit sleepy so they sit still when they have an x-ray. He would have been if the vets had called me sooner, but they didn't. So he came bundling out. He was all happy to see us, thinking that we were going to take him home. You would not think that this dog was dying. Like, you just wouldn't. Like, if you saw him in himself, he gobbles food. He's a happy dog. He's a bubbly dog. And anybody that ever met Alfie always said it. Like, you would not think that there was anything wrong with this dog, other than the fact that there clearly was, and he started getting worse and worse throughout a week. And the vet had said to us, like, you would have not known that, you know, your dog had cancer. You wouldn't have known. This would have developed within 5 days, and it was getting worse. So we had to have him put to sleep, and it was fucking awful. Like, since then, our family have just been in pieces. We haven't been able to really get our heads around it. The guilt has gobbled me up. I don't know why. I just feel angry and guilty all at the same time. I don't know. And because I've been the one holding my family together, I feel like I haven't really had the chance to grieve properly and be upset. Of course I've been upset, you know, like, I don't want to come across as if I haven't been upset. Of course I've been upset. Like, I have cried and cried and cried. It usually hits me at night. I see a picture of him. I start thinking about him. I think about the situation. I get flashbacks of having him put to sleep on that fucking table, and just how angry the vets had made me by not calling me when they should have called me. And it's just so bad. I mean, I could go into more detail about the entire thing, but I will just start crying on camera, and I'm just not ready to do that. But I did want to make this kind of video to let you guys know where I have been. I've been trying to get through life. So yeah, that was probably the bulk of my video, really. And it's fucking horrible. So yeah. It's been just over 2 weeks now, and I mean, they say it gets easier with time and stuff, and I'm sure it does, but for my mum and my dad, like, they're just broken. Like, they're better than they were. Like, I was cooking for them so they would eat something. My mum wouldn't eat. My dad, you know, he needs to eat. He's a working man. I'm doing everything that I can. I've obviously come back home now from where I was out, and it's just made the situation really not nice at home without Alfie. It's just been really difficult. So yeah, shit, really shit. I'm gonna leave this video here actually, and I'm gonna make a life update in a whole nother video, I think, because of this kind of deserved its own story, I think, really, and I don't want to bore you too much. So yeah, here's some pictures of Alfie for you guys.